Hello, welcome back to Boxroom Books with me, Ray, and Drew Gummerson for the second instalment of our interview. And this video, we're going to be talking about me and Mickie James. So thanks again, Drew, for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to just dive straight in because this is part two. Hopefully people have seen part one already. If you haven't, go down there and do that. Okay, I'm just going to dive straight in with this question. I know this is okay because I've checked with him that this is okay question to ask. Okay, so me and Mickie James is about a duo, a musical duo, and one of them has a hunchback. Why did you decide that Mickie James would be a hunchback? Where did that come from?
Where did that come from? So I've talked about the Lodger before, that I wanted to have it was really about gay adoption. So me and Mickie James, I wanted a book that had gay characters, like a gay male couple who are the stars, but it not to be about that, because so many gay queer books are about being gay or being queer.
And about the struggle. It's about the struggle a lot of the time, isn't it?
So I wanted that to be the least interesting thing in the book. So Mickie James has got this hunchback, and they're in a pop group. So if anyone mentions, for example, me at the time at work, they'd be saying, "Oh, Drew, he's the gay person." So I wanted it to be something bigger than being gay, I suppose. So I guess that's where it came from. Also at the time, me and Mickie James started as a short story for, because we talked about the Lodger, Peter Burton, who ran Gay Men's Press. So Gay Men's Press at the time was part of Miller's Prowler Group, which owned Gay Times. And I don't know if you remember, Gay Times used to put a short story collection out every year.
Right. No, I didn't know that.
So there was the Gay Times book of murder stories, Gay Times book of whatever. And also Diva was the sister magazine for lesbian stories. They do a Diva book of short stories. Yeah. So they would put out short stories every year. So Peter Burton had published The Lodger. Sorry, it's just getting a long story. So he asked me for a short story. So I wrote, I can't remember what it was called now. I think it was called Body Parts. So I'd written a story called Body Parts about me and Mickie James, the characters, because it wasn't originally called that. And so the first time they appeared was in one of the Gay Times short story collections, but that story about them never actually ended up in the book Me and Mickie James. So there's like a separate Me and Mickie James story for. So
there's maybe a chapbook, maybe on the horizon somewhere at some point.
Maybe. So that's where that came out. And also at the time, I was writing all different kinds of stories about body parts. So Me and Mickie James was obviously his back, but I'd written a story about feet, someone that had made a person and only their legs survived, so he had like a boyfriend that was just a pair of legs. I'd written Joe's Cock, which was published about a boy who steals somebody's cock. There were loads of them.
So the Forsaken Foreskin, did that come from that collection? No.
So so I was going to put a body parts short story collection together, so every different part of the body would feature, and then it would be a collection of short stories, but that never happened, I don't think. No, it didn't. No.
Okay, and so can I ask you this, right? Has anybody, you know how publishing now is really quite sometimes overly PC about, and having, you've got sensitivity readers for this, that and the other.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever said to you, "Oh, you can't tell that story because you don't have a hunchback, so therefore you don't have the rights to tell that"? So anybody ever said anything like that about it?
They haven't. I mean, some people didn't like it. But not necessarily that though. No.
Okay, that's fair enough. So you mentioned before that that wasn't the original title. So what was the original title for me and Mickie James?
So the pop group were called Down by Law. So the whole book was called Down by Law eponymous.
Right. Okay.
But then.
And this is a Jim Jarmusch film.
Yeah. That's right. So that's where they get the name from. But then it was my agent at the time. She didn't like the name Down by Law eponymous.
Right.
So I brainstormed. I must have come up with like 20, 30 different titles, but she didn't like any of them. And she eventually said, "Oh, how about Me and Mickie James?" Because that's the first line of the book. So we thought, why not then? We'll go with that. Okay. So it was thanks to my agent that the title exists.
Okay, and I guess sounds quite mainstream as well, doesn't it? I suppose more than some people are not going to know what eponymous means and things.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So they're maybe trying to make it more commercial kind of thing. Right, I've got to ask you this: were you ever an aspiring musician? Did you ever write songs or?
No, never. My brother was in a group, but not me. So I grew up and mum and dad were like into music, and my brother had a band because we had a pub, as I mentioned in the last bit. They used to rehearse down in the cellars. Pub had 4 cellars, and so Nick would always be down there with his bandmates playing music. And then he was in a pop group called what are they called? Tex Arcane.
Tex Arcane.
They were like a gothy group, and they went on tour around Essex, like playing gigs. So grew up in that environment, I suppose, but I did have an organ. I used to play the organ.
Okay, right. So in the book, while they're on tour, me and Mickie James, the band, go on tour, and they end up in Iraq at one point. And there is the song Wacky Iraqi is one of the songs, quite a very funny song. Was there no pushback, like from, because this was published by Jonathan Cape, who are a subsidiary of one of the big ones, right? Random House or?
Yeah, it was Random House, and now it's Penguin Random House, but it wasn't then. They've since joined. But yeah, so they were massive.
Was there no pushback on because it's quite, in terms of the political context at that time, you've got the Iraq War was still happening while this book's being published.
You asked me that question. I looked it up today, and it was, except it didn't actually pull out till 2011, so it would have been during the Iraq War.
Because this was published in 2008, so it's like 6 years after the Lodger, But there was no pushback, or they weren't worried about kind of, the politics or anything.
I don't think so. I don't think anyone's ever taken my story seriously, because it's about Wacky Iraqi, it's about weapons of mass destruction, isn't it? About trying to find them. But no, they never said anything.
Okay, so you mentioned an agent.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to tell us what agency she was with, or?
Yeah, I suppose so. She was lovely, and there's no hard feelings there. It was Lutyens and Rubinstein. Right.
Okay. And so you're not with her, and so was you really just with her for that one book kind of thing?
Well, that wasn't the intention, but that's how it ended up. Yeah.
And so you just parted ways because was it that she didn't like your next project kind of thing, or she didn't feel she could represent that next project, or?
So it's a long story, I guess, but me and Mickie James came out with Jonathan Cape, which is a prestigious part of that publishing house anyway. Because we'd already tried to sell it to, or she had, to numerous other publishers, and it's weird when you've got an agent and you get letters back, because everybody, people never hear back from publishers. So if you've got an agent, then you hear back from everybody. So she used to send me some of the letters that I'd got back that were rejections, and one of them said, "We love it, but we've already got one gay author, so we can't. It's too much of a conflict of interest."
Really?
But they were lovely about it. They were like, Drew's going to have a really long career.
So can you tell us about the process of getting an agent, Drew?
Getting an agent. So the Lodger had come out, and then quite a few years had passed. So I'd written a sequel to the Lodger, actually, that called Rising Camp. And because the Lodger had been a success, I thought, they'll be interested in it. But by the time I'd finished it, then Gay Men's Press had gone under. They ceased to exist. So then I had this book, Rising Camp, that I tried to sell, but as a sequel to one that had already come out. I sent it to, I think, an agent in America contacted me, and they were interested for a bit, and then they were trying to sell it. I don't know what publisher it was, but a publisher in America anyway. Eventually it didn't happen. So then I thought, what am I going to do next? And I don't know what I wrote next. So then I had another book called Darts, which did get picked up by a publisher, and in America again, and they were going to publish that. And
darts, as in
darts. Yeah. It was about a gay darts team. So that actually got picked up by a publisher, and then we spent about a year editing it, and then the publisher just contacted me one day and said, we're not going to go ahead with it now. I've since found out the story by someone from Twitter, but it's not my story, so I can't tell. I can't divulge. So then I'd had these 2 books which had nearly been published and then hadn't. And I'd started writing on ABC Tales, which is like a writing website, and I'd written some stories about a pop group and then I'd written one and people liked it, and then it was published in the Gay Times Book of Short Stories, and then I ended up writing 6 or 7 stories about this pop group. So I'd kind of written a novel by accident almost, and then but I didn't really intend to get it published. I just was writing them because they were on a website and people liked them. And then split up with my boyfriend then. I moved out of the house. This is a long story, but we'll get there in the end. I didn't have a computer, so I wasn't really writing anymore or doing anything. But I used to go to the gym. As you can tell, I look a fine figure of a man. And there was a computer at the gym which I used to check my emails. And I'd had an email from this coffee shop in America who were having 100 beans promotion. And I'd written, or was it 50? No, they're having a 50 beans promotion. I'd written a 50-word story which they'd found and said, can we buy it for $100? So I said, oh yeah, of course you can. And then they said, oh, have you got any more? I said, oh, well, I can write loads. So I ended up writing 7 or 8, I think. They sent me they faxed me a check for $700 or $800.
Wow. So
I'd written these stories which were going to be around coffee shops in America, totally out of the blue. And because I didn't have a computer, I'll buy a computer now. So I bought an Apple Mac, like it was whatever year it was. It must have been 2005. I don't know. So it was quite an old thing now. Well, it was state of the art at the time. So then I had a computer, and one night I'd had a few glasses of wine and thought, oh, I'll try and get published again, because I hadn't done it for years now. So I was drunk and I Googled agents, literary agents. And back then, you used to have to, as we were talking about the lodge, you used to have to send off, print it out, send off in the post, and it would come back. And I lived on an estate. There was no post office, and I don't have a car. So I thought, I'm not going to be able to get to a post office, so it's going to be a right pain in the arse to do that. So I'll just Google agents that accept email submissions. And I found about 5. There was hardly any then. I mean, it's all email now. So I found these 5, and one of them was Lutyens and Rubenstein. So I emailed her, drunk. I've written this book, me and Mickie James. Oh, it wasn't called that then. I'd written this book about the pop group. And she emailed me back within like a day. Oh, I really like it. If you're speaking to anyone else? I thought, anyone else? Like, I don't know anyone. Like, I'm on this estate in Leicester. I don't know any literary people. And then so I said, no, I'm not. And then she asked to see the rest, and she invited me down to her. Oh, you've read You from Pista Publications. That's almost what it was like. So I got the train down to London. She lived in somewhere where the houses were massive, which I'd never really seen before. And so she opened her door, and it was this beautiful house, and there was like a basement, like with loads of shelves and stuff. It was like so out of my world, but she was lovely. She was a really nice person, really enthusiastic about my book, and so she took me on, and we managed to get it published. So yeah, so that's how I got an agent, just by luck, really. And also I'd kind of written that, me and Mickie James, the whole thing was written just as like I do now, just write short stories and put them together. Although it was sold as a novel, I don't think that did it any favours in the end, when people were buying it, and I don't think they were expecting it. I think they were expecting it to be a novel, and it's not, because it's just a collection of short stories. So anyway, Jonathan Cape took it on in the end, because we'd already tried to flog it to Vintage, who said that they loved it, but they couldn't sell it because it had gay characters, so it wasn't marketable. But Vintage is the paperback arm of Jonathan Cape. So Felicity rang me one Sunday. She said, I've sent it straight to Dan Franklin, who's the publisher at, or was, I think he's retired now, at Jonathan Cape. And he loves it. He loves me and Mickie James. And so he took it on. But when it was the time of 2008, which is the financial crash, and the publishers were cutting back, so I've heard since, on mid whatever they're called, mid authors. So they just cancelled me and Mickie James before it came out.
So what's a mid author? Does that mean like mid career? Is it like you're not a debut?
Not mid career, but I can't remember what the right phrase is. But it's like if they're not selling a lot, basically.
Right, okay.
If you're not like a big star.
Yeah.
They were cutting back. In fact, Thingy, who you've just read his book, and you said it's the best book on autism.
Oh, My Life in Orbit is by Richard Blandford.
So he was published by Jonathan Cape at the same time as me.
Right.
My Elvis Blackout. So that was his book, and the same thing happened to him. Really, I think but he still carries on publishing the same as me now. So yeah. But thinking about it, actually, so I had tried to sell Mickie James before, because I'd posted it off to an agent, and I'd seen in the paper, I'd forgotten. So I'd seen in the paper this super agent. So like she'd got her debut author, £1 million contract. So I thought, yeah, I fancy that. So I wrote off to her. This was a few years before, and they got back to me, and she said, so this agent was so big that they have like interns, so they didn't actually read. So the intern had read it, and we like it, but this bit's a bit boring. Can you change it? So I changed it. Then it went back to another intern.
Which bit were they saying was boring? What?
I think it was I can't remember. It was the bit set in the theme park in Copenhagen. So anyway, they asked me to cut a bit of that. So
with the magician in the bath, that bit.
Yeah, and that was when there was a big speech by the giant on the. I can't remember it now. On the
like roller coaster thing, isn't it? Yeah.
I can't remember anything I've written. Anyway, yeah. So there was a bit about him that they said was too long, so I cut that, and it went to another intern, and then they said, "Oh no, it's still too long. It's still a bit boring." Changed that. Went to another intern. They said, "Oh, we don't like the ending. Can you change the ending?" So, because at the end of the original, it's not giving it away because it doesn't happen now. Mickie James dies, so he dies at the end.
Right.
So they said, "Oh, you can't have a comedy where the character dies at the end."
Yeah.
So then I rewrote the ending, so it went off, and then eventually.
And how did that feel like? Did you do that reluctantly, like rewrite the ending, or?
I don't think so at the time. I was quite fast at writing. I thought.
Yeah, you're really prolific, aren't you?
Not prolific, but not at all. Because I haven't had that many books, and I've been around for 100 years.
You obviously have got a lot. I know there's 4 that are published. So, like on the face of it, it might look like you've been writing for 20 odd years. Or it might look like you only write a book every 5 years. But obviously, from what you've talked about, there's an awful lot of stuff that's been written that's just not out there, but it's still valid. That's still content that you've written, isn't it?
So I didn't really feel that. I suppose I was thinking, oh, you're £1 million. Like, I'll change the ending for £1 million. I wasn't that tied to it, I suppose. And I guess what they said was probably, if it had been, let's make them straight, or if they'd have said that.
Yeah.
Or let's.
So there'd be a red line kind of thing, but they just didn't cross your red line. Yeah.
But it was like, thought, yeah, you've got a point. So I changed the ending, and Mickie James lives. So if you read the book, he's still alive. And then it got into the hands of the super agent. But she said she didn't want it, obviously. So she said, it's not for me, but I'll pass it to my colleague. And then he got back to me, and he didn't want it either. But then when they sent me back the final manuscript, someone had written on the envelope, if it was me, I would have published it. And I thought that was really lovely.
Sweet. Yeah.
So they obviously liked it, so that was nice. It was nice to go through that process.
And this is the story that you get so often, isn't it? It's like, it's not that it's not good writing, or it's not a good idea, or it's just that it's maybe not right for the market kind of thing.
Yeah, so I felt I kind of just put it away, like I said, and then a few years later, I kind of, that drunken night when I got the computer, I sent it off again. So, so that was how that ended up being published.
There you go, adventures in publishing, guys. Thank you, Drew. There will be more. We are going to move on to part 3